Discover how a professional cleaner transformed an offensive bet into a life-changing love story. Sara was exhausted. Dust settled on the frame of her rundown house, but the clutter in her heart was far more daunting. At 34, she was a single mother of two, battling a world that often turned its back on her. Town gossip buzzed like flies around a garbage can, whispering tales of her struggles, and the life her ex-husband had left her to navigate alone. She worked tirelessly, scrubbing away the remnants of someone else's mess in homes that glistened while her own dimmed under the weight of her responsibilities. On that sunny spring day, laughter rang out, merging with the mouth-watering scent of barbecue wafting through the annual community fair, a stark contrast to the state of her heart. As Sara watched families bask in joy, a cruel twist of fate unveiled itself. Across the way, a group of affluent members of the community snickered over a bet on who could make her life more challenging. They were huddled in a circle, drinks in hand, their laughter a serrated knife in her chest. The heaviness churned in the pit of her stomach. Her dreams for her children, to rise beyond these economic chains, felt like a dwindling flicker. The weight of prejudice and judgment bore down on her as outsiders labeled her based on her struggles. But just as despair threatened to swallow her whole, she spotted Jacob. He leaned against a vendor's stall, scanning the fare with a hardened gaze that hinted at battles fought beyond the town. There was a deep sadness in his eyes, a mirror to her own struggles. It was clear he was a combat veteran, someone who knew how it felt to carry burdens others didn't understand. With a simple nod, they acknowledged their shared hardships. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That night, as the thunder rolled and rain battered the roof, Sara found herself enveloped in her fears. Jacob's voice echoed in her mind, reminding her of her strength. Together they discussed their dreams, ambitions that felt just out of reach. Jacob talked about finding peace in a place riddled with memories that haunted him. Light flickered between them, a possible futures that pulled at them from the dark. The storm outside felt like a metaphor for her internal battle. With relentless winds howling, she stood at a crossroads, torn between the unfamiliar comfort Jacob offered and the crumbling foundation of a community that had reveled in her humiliation. It was now or never. Would she pick up her sword to fight against classism, even when it left her exposed? And as she made plans to confront the town at the next meeting, she felt a surge of determination. Unbeknownst to her, the townsfolk were in for a reckoning. Would Sara's journey ignite the change she longed for? Or would the weight of their judgments pull her back into the shadows? Her heart raced, knowing that the fight for respect was just beginning, every piece of it tethered to the love blossoming beside her. As dawn broke, casting a soft glow through the cracks in Sara's aging shutters, nerves twisted in her stomach like a roller coaster ride. Today was the day. She had prepared all night, running through her thoughts like a script, unsure if she would find the courage to be heard. The town's community center, once a place of warmth, felt like a coliseum where she'd be pitted against those who underestimated her. Outside, the bustle of the fair had transitioned into a quiet morning, but a tempest brewed inside her. With each passing minute, those affluent faces flashed in her mind, the laughter, the derision. They represented everything she loathed about this town. Each mocking smirk was a stone in her chest, heavy and cold. Yet Jacob's words lingered like an ember, urging her to act boldly. Holding her breath, she held her children close as they made their way to the meeting. Their little hands squeezed hers, innocent and trusting. "Mommy, are we going to make them nice?" her youngest Max piped up. His hopeful eyes pierced through her fear, and in that moment, she realized it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about them, her kids who deserved a future free from judgment and hostility. As they approached the community center, she saw familiar faces, the side glances and whispers unraveling her composure. Instinct wanted to retreat, to shield herself from the storm she felt brewing in the hearts of those who had taunted her. But deep within, a fierceness ignited. This was her moment to reclaim her narrative. Inside, the air buzzed with anticipation. The townsfolk gathered, facing each other like gladiators preparing for a show. Sara's palms trembled, holding tightly to the podium as her heart raced. Jacob sat quietly in the back, his eyes keenly focused on her. A gentle reminder that she was not alone. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice quivering just enough for those near the front to hear. "I stand before you today not as a victim, but as a mother wanting more for her children." Silence enveloped the room, the crowd's murmur fading to a pin-drop hush. "I know some of you have made jokes about my situation," she continued, struggling against the rising tumult of anger. "But your laughter does not define me." She lifted her chin, the weight of her struggles crystallizing into resolve. "Today, I challenge you to see me beyond my circumstances. See my children, see their dreams." The heaviness in her chest began to lighten. With each word, she shed years of shame, peeling away layers of judgment. The more she spoke about her dreams for her children, the more she saw glimmers of empathy in the crowd. "We all have battles we fight," she pressed on, "and everyone deserves respect, no matter where they come from." As Sara finished her speech, a stillness consumed the room. For the first time, she felt powerful and exposed, like a wildflower growing from a crack in concrete. Would this be enough to shift their perspectives? Would they listen? A hand shot up near the back. It was Jacob. "I think it's time we all invited change to our backyard," he stated, his voice strong and steady. "Let us build a community that includes everyone, one that supports rather than judges." The murmurs picked up again, but they were different this time. More understanding. More wrestling with what they always believed. Sara held her breath, glancing at her children. What would happen next? Would they truly embrace this change, or were they too set in their ways? As the meeting wore on, the tension hung thick in the air. The townspeople would have to decide where to stand, and Sara, she could only hope it was for the future she envisioned. But would they rise to the challenge? Or would she find herself back on the outside once more? Anxiety clawed at her as possibilities loomed ahead, each one sparking a desperate urgency to know what would come next. The murmurs swelled like a tide, washing over Sara as she stood before the crowd. She could almost feel the weight of their stares, the searching glances shifting her way from those who had, until now, judged her without understanding. It was both terrifying and liberating. With every beat of her heart, hope danced between fear and anticipation. "Change," Jacob spoke again, his voice grounding. "It's never easy, but it starts here and now." His gaze traveled through the crowd, trying to connect with familiar faces. Sara bravely put herself out there. "We can't just leave it all as words. We need action." Sara felt a tremor of gratitude for Jacob, for his unwavering belief in her, igniting a fire within her that pushed back against the dread. If only others would see what he saw. She squared her shoulders, eyeing those who had laughed, those who had belittled rather than nurtured. Could they really change their hearts? Softly, a voice rose from the back, a woman whose perfect hair shimmered even in the dull community center lights. "But what can we really do?" The question hung heavy in the air. It was laced with skepticism, probing at the very fabric of their conversation. Sara's breath caught for a moment. Reality slapped her sharply. Would they just go back to their usual lives, content in their privilege, leaving her hanging on a dream? But then she felt Max's hand squeeze hers tighter, his tiny fingers clutching onto hope. "We can start by listening," Sara said, her voice steady now. "We can commit to building a real community where we don't turn away just because things get uncomfortable." A ripple surged through the audience. The small flickers of defiance in those who had once mocked her began to shift. They were grappling with something unfamiliar, doubt, perhaps? It dawned on her that this was not just about her speech anymore. It was a challenge thrown into the very core of their identity. Another voice pierced through the tension. "It's easier to keep things the way they are, isn't it?" From an older man who had been a loud critic at the previous council meetings. "Yes," Jacob replied, drawing the man's eye. "But easy isn't what we need. We need to challenge ourselves. It's time for growth. We can't just watch Sara fight for her family. We need to stand beside her." Sara's heart raced. She saw pockets of nodding heads, whispers of agreement stirring among the townsfolk. Could this really be happening? The resistant faces were starting to soften, their furrowed brows relaxing into contemplation. It was the first sign of change she had longed for and feared in equal measure. As the meeting progressed, conversations sparked to life, tentative brainstorming, ideas shared, voices rising to meet the moment. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and exhilarating all over again. Yet, amid the hope, a nagging doubt pricked at her heart. Would this momentum last beyond today? Would they truly remember the faces behind the judgments? Just when it felt like they were gaining solid ground, an unexpected figure stepped forward. Sarah's breath hitched as she recognized Clara, someone she had used to look up to. Clara's perfectly polished persona masked a history of cruelty, sharp words, and turbulent judgments. "I think we need to ask a hard question," she declared. The room fell quiet, a spotlight piercing through the tension. Sara braced herself. What would Clara say? And would it shatter the fragile foundation of change they'd begun to build? As Clara prepared to speak, Sarah's heart pounded fiercely in her chest. Could this pivotal moment swing either way? Sarah's eyes flickered between Clara and the hopeful faces of her children. Everything she wanted teetered on a knife's edge, and she dared to hold her breath. Would they be lost again? Or was this the beginning of something beautifully transformative? Clara took a step forward, her expression unreadable. The spotlight caught her perfectly sculpted features, casting shadows that emphasized the tension in the room. For a brief moment, Sara felt as if the air had solidified around her, choking off any hopeful thoughts she had managed to muster. It was more than just Clara's presence. It was the weight of expectation that hung heavily, poised to tip either way. What exactly do we mean by change? Clara asked, her voice smooth yet cutting. Are we really ready to change? Or are we simply indulging a fleeting moment, putting on a show to pat ourselves on the back? Sara felt a tight knot form in her stomach. She couldn't tell if Clara was genuinely probing, or if this was the beginning of another attack. Yet she sensed something different in the crowd. A quiet stirring, now that they were witnessing an authentic confrontation rather than just hearsay. Jacob leaned in closer, an unspoken alliance glowing between them, urging her on. No one is asking for perfection, Sara began, trying to restore the momentum. We need to first open our eyes and listen. I can't promise we'll have all the answers, but we can find them together. The crowd shifted, leaning slightly forward, engaged yet anxious. Clara stayed grounded, arms crossed, her flawless exterior immediately throwing a juxtaposition against Sara's raw honesty. Listening is fine, she said. But are you ready to face the truths, the real truths about our town? This place has been this way for years. Are we really just going to flip a switch and change everything? But isn't that what change is about? Jacob countered, speaking up again, his unwavering faith in Sara evident. It isn't about flipping a switch, it's about turning a page. It's about making a choice together. A few voices murmured in agreement. The tension twisted between Clara's challenge and Jacob's hopeful vision, creating a palpable energy in the room. Sara could almost hear her heartbeat ringing louder than Clara's words. Could it really be happening? Could she inspire others to stand for something more? Sara took a breath, ready to face Clara's scrutiny head-on. I know change is hard. I know it means we might stumble, that some may leave and some may stay. But if we truly care about each other, if we want a future for our children, they need us to be better. Max piped up, his small voice cutting through the tension yet again. The room went quiet, a collective intake of breath hanging in the air. Clara's hard facade softened just a touch, surprised by the child's forthrightness. It's noble, yes. But how do we know you're not just asking us to risk our comfort for your dreams? Sara felt the weight of the challenge crash down on her. The comfort of apathy was a seductive lullaby that everyone had sung along to for far too long. Yet, the spark ignited within her urged her to dig deeper. Because hope is more powerful than fear, she declared, her voice steady and resonating with conviction. It can guide us if we let it. The crowd shifted again, some nodding slowly, absorbing her words like sunlight breaking through clouds. But still Clara stood firm, the silent guardian of tradition and stability. The moment hung, raw and fragile. Could they choose to embrace the uncomfortable truths, the vulnerability that came with stepping into the unknown? A feisty debate seemed inevitable, thoughts and desires teetering at the brink of change to Sara. This was more than just a discussion. It was a battle of ideologies. The path to transformation would undoubtedly be rife with challenges, but there was also a glimmer of something profound waiting to bloom. Just as Clara opened her mouth again, a new thought forming in her mind, the door swung open, sending a gust of wind through the room. A chilling draft that broke the intensity and drew all eyes toward a newcomer framed in the doorway. Who was it, and how would they shape this moment of choice? Would they bolster the momentum, or crush the budding hope still fighting to pull through? The figure in the doorway stood silhouetted against the dim light of the night, a contrast to the heated debate unfolding just moments before. The air thickened as the crowd leaned forward, eyes wide. It was Eli, the town's oft-forgotten mechanic. He typically preferred the solace of his garage to the spotlight of community discussions. But tonight something seemed different. His usually scruffy appearance held an unusual urgency, an intensity in his eyes that immediately grabbed everyone's attention. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, stepping deeper into the room, his voice steady yet vulnerable. "But I think I have something to say." The silence was palpable, thicker than before. Clara's gaze sharpened, skepticism dancing across her features. "What could you possibly add, Eli?" Eli inhaled deeply, his hands fidgeting at his sides. "I've watched this town change in small, painful ways. It's easy to forget what matters until it's gone. But all of us here, we're tied together, whether we've acknowledged it or not." He paused, glancing at the group, as if daring them to disagree. "I know we all have our stories, our fears. But I've seen the power of what happens when we choose to work together. A few years back, my family lost everything in a fire. It was people just like us, neighbors, friends who put everything aside to help rebuild. They helped me when I had nothing to offer. They taught me that we could lift each other up." Sara felt a twist in her heart, moved by his honesty. This was the reminder they needed, that connection mattered more than appearances or comfort. The raw humanity he exhibited ignited something electric in the atmosphere. "You think comfort is worth more than what we could create together?" Eli continued, the words flowing with surprising fervor. "When we step out of our comfort zones, when we embrace those challenging truths, we become more than individuals. We become a community." Clara opened her mouth to retort, but for the first time, her words faltered. The room held its breath. Sara stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with Eli. "He's right," she said, her voice carrying a melody of hope. "We aren't just fighting for our dreams or for a better future. We're fighting for each other. For the moments that take our breath away, for the strength found in unity. When we share burdens, it makes us all lighter." A murmur rippled through the crowd. More heads nodded in agreement, envisioning a clearer picture of the strength that lay dormant within them. Clara crossed her arms tighter, though a flicker of indecision danced across her face. "And what if that unity stumbles? What if we find ourselves lost?" "Then we'll find our way again," Jacob said, echoed by voices agreeing with a quiet fervor. "We can hold each other accountable. We can teach one another. That's how true change happens." Just then, a commotion arose outside, the unmistakable sound of footsteps racing down the street. People turned toward the exit, curiosity piqued. A young woman burst through, breathless and wide-eyed, as if she'd been running toward something monumental. "I heard you were talking about change," she cried out, urgency flooding her tone. Sara sensed the shift as the crowd leaned closer, intrigued. What did she have to say? What knowledge did she bring that might reshape the course of their conversation? In that moment, everything felt poised on the edge of transformation. There was hope in the air, a promise that maybe, just maybe, they could seize the opportunity to change together. What had this newcomer witnessed that was so important? Would she be the catalyst to push them further past their fears? Or would she shatter the fragile unity they hadn't yet fully formed? The newcomer stood panting, frantically scanning the crowd as if searching for someone. Her chest heaved, the urgency in her eyes gripping everyone's attention. "Please listen. You have to hear what I've seen." Eli stepped forward, still holding the crowd's attention with his earlier words. "What do you mean? What have you seen?" The girl took a moment to compose herself, drawing a shaky breath. "My name is Mia. I just came from the old factory on the edge of town." Her voice faltered for a moment, a wave of emotion washing over her. "There's something happening out there. Something big, and it's going to affect us all. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Clara uncrossed her arms, her skepticism replaced with curiosity. What are you talking about? Mia clenched her fists, her face tightening with determination. There are trucks moving in and out. I saw them loading containers. They're not just empty boxes. They looked full of something dangerous. We need to do something before it's too late. Eli's serene expression shifted into one of concern. Dangerous? What do you mean? They've been using the factory at night, she continued, her voice rising as fear seeped through. I overheard them talking. They're planning something. It feels wrong. I could see it in their eyes. Jacob stepped forward as well, his brow furrowed. Okay, we need to understand what's going on. But how do you know it's connected to us? It could be anything. Mia shook her head, desperate for them to see her truth. It's the same company that's been trying to buy out our small businesses. If they take over, we lose everything: our homes, our jobs, our community. Sara felt a chill run through her. If this was true, so they're not just after properties. They want to erase us as a community? Mia nodded, her eyes shining bright with intensity. Yes. But if we unite, we can fight back. We have to bring this to light before it's too late. Together. The room erupted in chaos. Voices clashed, uncertainty mixed with determination. And old rivalries bubbled to the surface. Sara felt her heart race as she recognized the feelings swirling in the crowd. Fear and hope coexisted in a delicate balance. Clara raised her hand, commanding attention once more. Wait. If this is true, we can't just sit here. We have to take action, but it won't be easy. Are we ready to step up? Can we really band together? Eli looked around the room, his earlier resolve rekindled. This is what we were talking about. If we come together, we can be stronger than any corporation trying to tear us apart. The crowd hushed, absorbing the weight of Eli's words, faces reflecting a mix of courage and concern. A feeling ignited like sparks catching fire. Emotions intertwined as they weighed the risk of failure against the possibility of change. How do we begin? Mia asked, her eyes glistening with hope. Jacob took a deep breath. We need to investigate. Gather evidence. Talk to those who've seen things. We have to unite our voices. Eli placed a hand on Mia's shoulder, his sincerity breaking through the tension. You've already started. You've broken through the silence. Now let us rally this town before it's too late. With every nod, every whispered agreement from the crowd, the pulse of unity beat stronger. Yet beneath that unity lay an undercurrent of fear. The weight of their chosen path loomed large. Would they be able to stand together against a force that threatened to dismantle everything they cherished? As they stepped toward the unknown, they could feel the chill of apprehension wash over them, but also the flicker of hope. Mia's eyes filled with determination as she faced the crowd. Together, we can stop this, but are you all with me? As they nodded, a hush fell, thick with anticipation. The path ahead was uncertain, yet it shimmered with possibility. And as they prepared to take that leap, one thought echoed in their minds. What if their greatest battle was just beginning? The air in the community center crackled with tension and unresolved thoughts as the crowd surged with energy. Mia stood tall, trying to soak up the support radiating from her neighbors. But deep inside, doubt fluttered like a restless bird. Could they really come together? Eli turned to the crowd, meeting eyes that were now filled with resolve, yet he sensed the weight of their fear. We need a plan. If what Mia says is true, we can't just rely on hope. We have to dig deeper into this. He swept his gaze across the room, locking onto Jacob. You're good with tech, right? Find out everything you can about that factory and the company involved. We need details. Jacob nodded, already pulling out his phone. I'll start with the online records. Maybe there's something in the past that connects them to our town. Let us also talk to the owners of the businesses they're trying to buy, Clara chimed in. If anyone has seen something suspicious, it might be them. Mia felt a sense of urgency wash over her. And I can reach out to some friends at the local newspaper. If we can get them involved, it could put pressure on the company. Sara jumped in, enthusiasm growing. I know a few people who work in the factory. Maybe they can share what they've seen. I'll ask around. As ideas flowed, the atmosphere shifted. The fear that had almost paralyzed them began to thaw, replaced by a sense of purpose. They were no longer just individuals. They were part of something bigger, a collective heartbeat that signaled a refusal to be passive. But just as excitement peaked, another thought loomed. Mia felt her stomach drop. What if they catch us? What if we put ourselves in danger? Eli stepped closer to her, his expression serious but kind. We'll be careful. We can't let fear keep us from doing what's right. This is our home. We have to fight for it. Nods of agreement spread through the crowd, though the hint of fear remained. For some, it echoed like a distant storm, threatening to break. But it was drowned out by a chorus of resolute voices. All fueled by the possibility of victory, as they forged their plans. Uncertainty loomed over Mia. She had never felt so connected and simultaneously so fragile. They were treading a line between bravery and recklessness. What if their efforts failed? Would they lose everything, or worse, would they put themselves in harm's way? But there was no backing down. They were united, and that unity tasted like hope. They broke into smaller groups, strategizing where to go, who to talk to, all grounded in the shared fear and flame of determination. Hours rushed by in a blur of discussions, quiet laughs, and reassuring pats on the back. Mia tried to safeguard her heart, knowing the path ahead was treacherous. Yet as she looked around, she saw friends, neighbors, even though she openly disagreed with working together. That heartbeat of unity pulled her toward the possibility of victory. Just as the last group finished making their plans, a cold breeze swept through the open doors of the center. A shadow flickered at the edge. A tall figure in a dark coat standing outside. He was watching them. Mia's heart raced, adrenaline shooting through her veins. Everyone grew silent, instinctively gravitating closer. Who was he? Was he just passing by? Or had he been sent to keep an eye on them? The moment hung on the precipice, the tension like a taut string ready to snap. Who is that guy? Someone whispered. The crowd leaned in, a collective breath held tightly. They were on the brink of action, of conflict, and of the unknown. What did this stranger want? And what would it mean for their fight? Mia's breath hitched in her throat as the figure outside remained motionless, a dark silhouette against the fading daylight. The whispers among the crowd grew louder, echoing her own trepidation. It was as if they were all sharing the same thought. This was no ordinary passerby. Should we confront him? Jacob broke the silence, his voice low but steady. Or should we call the police? Eli stepped forward, his jaw tight with determination. Let us not make any rash moves. We don't know who he is yet. He scanned the faces around him, gauging their reactions. We need to stay focused. Whatever plans we've discussed, we must keep moving forward. Mia felt a pang of relief at Eli's grounded approach. They couldn't let fear paralyze them. Not now when they had committed to fighting for their home. What if he's here watching? We need to get to work discreetly, she suggested, glancing over her shoulder toward the door. The stranger crossed his arms, his face obscured by the shadow of his coat. But Mia sensed he was aware of their scrutiny. A chill ran through her. The way he watched them felt like a predator observing its prey. Maybe we should split up, Clara offered. It'll be harder for him to follow all of us. Good idea, Sara added, her eyes darting back to the figure, clearly unnerved. If he's connected to that factory, we need to be careful. Nods of agreement rippled through the group. Mia steeled herself, emotions churning inside her: fear, hope, anger, until they settled into a determined resolve. They wouldn't be driven away by intimidation. Okay, here's the plan, Eli said, stepping into a leadership role. Clara, you and Jacob take the businesses. Figure out if anyone has seen anything suspicious. Sara and I will try to gather intel from the factory employees. Mia felt a spark of pride watching Eli seamlessly lead them. I'll start looking into the newspaper angle. We've got to turn up the heat on that company. She felt the group rallying behind her words, and it ignited a fire in her gut. As they gathered their things and split off into pairs, Mia took one last glance at the figure. Discomfort settled over her, but she forced herself to shake it off. They were stronger together, and they had a mission. Outside, it was dusk. The light dimmed, making the streets look unfamiliar. The chill of the evening air enveloped her as she hurried down the road, the weight of the world on her shoulders. But she pressed on. With each step, Her heart surged with the bravery of those beside her. Her mind raced with thoughts, each more frantic than the last. What if they found something? What if they didn't? What if the stranger was more than just a bystander? As she traversed the streets, she spotted familiar faces, a few residents stepping out of their houses, their expressions reflecting the same mixture of anxiety and determination that had lit the community center. They were all watching each other, wary but united. It filled Mia with hope. They were not alone in this fight. They could spill their stories out to the world together. Suddenly, a flicker of motion at the corner of her eye caught her attention. The stranger was gone. She glanced around, trying to suppress the rising unease in her chest. Had he vanished into thin air? Or was he lurking closer than she thought? The tension knotted in her stomach again, thick and heavy. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being hunted, that their actions were under scrutiny by the very forces they sought to challenge. When her phone buzzed, it jolted her back to the present. It was a text from Eli: "Stay alert. We might need to regroup." Mia swallowed hard, a fresh wave of worry washing over her. How deep did this go? What risks lay ahead for not just her, but for all of them? With the sun setting and darkness promising to conceal more than just their plans, she couldn't shake the fear that they were racing against time. What awaited them over the hill? And more importantly, what would happen when the truth finally surfaced? Mia moved quickly, her heart beating in time with her footsteps on the pavement. Each person she passed seemed to carry their own weight of worry, but there was strength in their eyes too. They were in this together, battling something larger than themselves. She reached the local library, hoping to find an angle that might reveal just what was happening with the factory. Dust particles danced in the slant of light coming through the windows as she entered. The quiet hum of pages turning felt reassuring in the tense atmosphere outside. Mia made her way to the back where the archives rested, rows of newspapers stacked high. She grabbed a few dated editions, flipping through headlines that spoke of progress and promises. But all she found were glowing reviews of the factory manufacturing jobs, economic growth, but no mention of the recent whispers of discontent. She felt a familiar frustration. There had to be something hidden beneath the surface. She dug deeper, searching for anything that might shed light on the changes in the community. As she scrolled through articles, an image caught her eye. It was a photograph of the factory's grand opening, a younger version of the plant manager standing proudly at the mic. She leaned in closer. The man in the photo had a familiar darkness in his eyes, a shadow that felt wrong. "Mia?" A voice broke her concentration. She turned to see Maria, a local journalist. Mia had seen her at a few town meetings, always armed with a notebook and sharp smile. "What are you doing here?" Maria asked, curiosity lighting her features. "I'm looking for information on the factory," Mia replied, her voice tense. "Have you heard any rumors? Anything about leftover toxic waste or unsafe working conditions?" Maria frowned, pulling a chair in beside Mia. "There've been murmurs, but nothing substantial. People are scared to talk." Mia nodded, pulse racing. "What about the owner? He seems different, doesn't he?" "I've never met him," Maria admitted, glancing away. "But I've heard stories. Yes, not exactly a community man. Just looks out for profits." The notion of unspoken fears breathed life into a thought in Mia's mind. What if we interviewed some former workers? Would they be willing to talk? Maria's eyes widened. "It's a good idea. If they feel safe, we might uncover something." The two began crafting a plan, compiling a list of potential interviewees. With every name they wrote down, excitement bubbled in Mia's chest. They could dig deep. They could find the truth. As the sun dipped further below the horizon, shadows crept in at the edges of the library, mirroring the thoughts lurking in Mia's mind. The figure outside had vanished, but now it felt like he was everywhere. She shoved the unsettling feeling aside. Claire and Jacob would be reporting soon. She had to focus. Suddenly her phone buzzed again. It was Eli again. "Regroup at the center. We've got a situation." Mia's stomach dropped. She exchanged a knowing glance with Maria. The air crackled with urgency. They had to move, to connect with the others. Making their way out, Mia felt a surge of determination pulsate through her. Somehow, it all felt like a race against time, against shadows, against a truth that could break or save them. As they stepped outside, a pulsing anxiety swirled inside her. What awaited them at the community center? Did darker forces lie just beyond their doorstep, watching, waiting? And as she hurried down the street, that familiar feeling clung to her, a blend of fear and hope. Would they find answers, or had they stepped into a trap? The atmosphere in the community center was charged with a dangerous cocktail of tension and anticipation. As Mia burst through the doors, the murmur of anxious voices fell silent, and all heads turned toward her. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, almost mocking the urgency thrumming in her veins. Eli said their essay situation. She panted, urgency threading her words. The faces before her reflected a spectrum of emotions: confusion, fear, and an undercurrent of determination. Eli stepped forward from the small crowd gathered, his brows furrowed deeply. We've been tipped off about an impending raid at the factory. They know we're investigating. We have to act fast. Her heart raced. What do we do? Do we confront them? No, Jacob interjected, his voice steady but urgent. We can't go in blind. That could put everyone at risk. We need to gather our evidence first, or at least find a way to expose them publicly. Sara, her eyes blazing, piped up from near the back. I have video footage from social media, people checking in near the factory late at night. If we can get it in front of the right eyes, we can create some noise about their actions. Mia could scarcely comprehend the pieces falling into place, but the fire flared in her chest. And I spoke to a few former employees today who were willing to talk, she added, recalling the sense of empowerment she felt as they shared glimpses of their truth. Their stories could expose everything. Clara, ever the skeptic, remained unconvinced. What if they just deny everything, and we end up looking foolish? We can't afford to be afraid. Jacob replied with a fierce intensity. This is not just about us anymore. The entire community needs to know what is happening, and we can pull together to protect it. The weight of his words echoed in the room, stirring hearts and minds. Empathy washed over the crowd, infiltrating even the staunchest of skeptics. With each passing moment, Mia could feel the collective strength shifting alongside their fears. Then let us take action, Clara finally agreed, her tone imbued with newfound resolve. Let us gather our evidence, mobilize everyone we can, and prepare for whatever's coming. As they broke into smaller groups to begin their respective tasks, a resolve surged within Mia, grounding her racing thoughts. This was not just about survival. It was about defending the bonds they were building, bonds that mattered more than ever against the threat looming in the shadows. Once Mia paired up with Eli, determination radiated from him like an electric charge, guiding her as they moved swiftly through town, checking in on businesses and listening for whispers of wrongdoing. At each stop, they felt the collective beat of hearts uniting within the challenges. There was a fire igniting in their community, even amidst the dangers lurking beneath the surface. But as evening crept in, that same darker figure emerged again at the corner of her eye, watching and waiting. She saw him across the street, and panic flared within her. Eli, she hissed, pointing, but when she looked again he had disappeared, leaving only a sickening feeling gnawing in her gut. What's the matter? He asked, aware of her growing anxiety, but she shook her head, trying to focus on their mission. Nothing, Mia lied, shoving the worry aside. Let us just keep moving. Hours ticked by like molten lead. Their relentless investigation built on hope and the specter of potential danger. As night fully unfurled its cloak, Mia and Eli returned to the community center, where everyone gathered again, eyes bright with shared adrenaline. With a full report from those who had scoured the ground and collected evidence, they began to piece together the puzzle of what was happening at the factory. Together, they categorized everything: the videos, the interviews, the testimonies, each story a whisper that could crescendo into something powerful. As they organized their findings, a soft knock on the door startled them. Jacob sprang to answer it. When he swung it wide open, Mia's eyes widened. The shadowy figure stood there, a placeholder anchoring the tension in the air. Looking for something? He sneered, a bemused smile curling his lips. The group froze, heat rising, breath hitching as they sized up this apparent intruder. Fear gripped Mia's heart, stretching its claws deeper with every minute that passed. Had their investigation finally drawn the attention of something far worse than they imagined? But as they glanced around the room and saw the determination etched on each face, her stomach knotted more from anger than fear. They had come too far, fought too hard. They had each other. "Get out," Sara spoke, voice sharp and clear. She stepped forward, her presence emboldened by the weight of truth. "If you're here to intimidate us, you can leave now. Because we want to be silent." The figure laughed, shaking his head, arrogance radiating from him. "You think you're strong? This town is nothing without its so-called leaders, and you're simply a bunch of mismatched souls who will crumble." But with each passing moment, the walls of unity seemed to seep beyond the boundaries of their small gathering. Eli shifted into the spotlight. "You're wrong. We are stronger than you think. Together, we have stories you can't silence." The atmosphere thickened. Mia felt the weight of every resolve, every story, every laugh, and every tear pushing back against the creeping dread. They could rise above this. They could reclaim what was theirs. "Leave now while you can," Jacob warned, stepping up beside Sara and Eli. "This is our town, and we will fight for it." The figure reeled back as if struck by a sudden wind, uncertainty flickering in his eyes, before regaining his composure. "You think this ends here? Think again. There are forces at play much larger than you realize." And with that he turned, disappearing into the depths of the night. Mia's breath caught as the weight of what he had said sunk in. There was more at stake than anyone had prepared for. After a moment of silence, filled with the burgeoning realization that this was their true fight, Mia looked at her friends, her family, her community. Together she began softly, yet fierceness ignited in her stare. "We face whatever comes. Together, we fight." And in that moment, they knew this wasn't just for them or their town. It was for everyone who had come before them. Everyone who had faced despair and walked away empowered. This would be their transformation. This would be the metamorphosis of a community melted into one, forged through storms and shadows, fighting for light and strength. As they gathered, confirming their unity, Mia's heart swelled. It was the final affirmation, the courage to face tomorrow. Alliances that could withstand anything, love of this place they called home. And as morning broke, the sun spilling gold over the town, they prepared to rise together. This time, they would not be defined by the darkness. They would be the light. But before that dawn could break fully, an urgent message pulsed through Mia's mind. It's time to take action. It's time to rise. And just like that, she set to work, knowing that this was only the beginning. This is the moment for you too. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next incredible chapter of transformation. Leave a like now to feed that algorithm, and keep this fire alive. Comment your thoughts and feelings about this overwhelming conclusion. Share instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation unfold. Don't wait not even one more second. Your support means everything.